Here we go.
Welcome to the New Media Show, where each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, UTC +4, Todd Cochran and Rob Greenlee take their over 30 combined years of leadership in the podcasting space to discuss, dissect, and deconstruct the current podcasting news, forecasts, trends, and predictions. Now here are your hosts, Academy of Podcasting Hall of Famers, Todd Cochran and Rob Greenlee.
Hey, Rob, for those watching live, we got a new look.
Yeah, I think we're going to try a few things new here on the show, and so hopefully we'll be doing things a little bit different. Hopefully they're better, but who knows, right? It's very subjective.
You're still in the monitor back here, but people can't see you.
Well, but you can flip back and forth because you're using a TriCaster.
Yeah,
right?
so but I can go this way, and then they can see you double in the corner and on the monitor. So there's a little work that has to be there.
Yeah.
And then I've got some I've got some fancy stuff that we can do, and I can fly in the computer screen. So I don't know. We'll see, but here's what we're doing. And again, welcome everybody to the show. Thanks for being here. Rob and I had an executive meeting.
Yeah, executive.
And we're trying to see if we can enhance the show a little bit. Rob was kind of getting tired of being in the back 40 in the monitor back there. So I did a little TriCaster magic this morning, and we put a screen to screen together. There's still a few tweaks I need to make. I can see that I need to try to get rid of those buttons on the bottom. If we get that done, that'll help improve things. But yeah, you've even got a border around you, Rob. There's a border.
I saw that. It's pretty fancy looking.
So, it doesn't prove the content any, but maybe we look a little better.
Well, I think it's interesting because we're seeing what's happening in the podcasting medium. People are using Riverside and StreamYard and things, and I think we've been doing it this way with the monitor behind us for a long time, and everybody else in the podcasting space is doing the side-by-side thing. And just thought we'd play around with that. The monitor thing is not like it's going away or anything. It's just we're just kind of pushing it to the back, and hopefully both of us are more visible in the video, and we're doing things a little bit more like how creators are doing stuff on YouTube these days. So that's kind of, and that's part of what I wanted to talk about today too. And I know, Todd, you and I have talked about video podcasting off and on for years because we are one. But it seems like it's getting heightened attention right now. I know that there was an article in Pod News that was talking about how there seems to be a growth in the number of video podcasts. And so we should be clear, what is the difference between a video podcast and a video on YouTube? I don't, Todd, if you...
Well, but the listeners and viewers don't care.
Yeah. But since this show is targeted towards podcasters, typically, podcasters do care, and they need to understand what the difference might be and how it might impact how they publish their program. Right.
Yeah, it's and you and I were looking at some websites yesterday and looking at, and what everyone does is it's just like these, and again, we're not graphics people. That's not Rob and I. So if you are and you want to help us, and help become a producer of the show, volunteer, that is, we don't have any budget, because just so you know, Rob and I don't get paid for this. We don't, we basically get to use our company's time to produce it, but that's it. And, but otherwise, if you want to help us out, let us know, because we don't get any external help from either Blueberry or Libsyn in any of this production. Except for Blueberry pays for the hosting of the video and audio files, but it could be on Libsyn just the same. Yeah,
which is significant. There's nothing insignificant about that. That's important.
So I think the key here is, if we're looking for ideas, and if you want to help us up the game, drop us an email, and we'd love to have your assistance. Again, looking for graphic creative support, that type of stuff, maybe an intro video. It really runs the gambit. But I was going to actually show something, and I'll get it ready here in a little bit. But the if you look at classic YouTube cover art, most shows have someone that will actually. Let's see if I can get some of this up. And I'm just going to search very simply. Any of you can do this. I'm just searching for the word podcast, just the single word on YouTube. And let's see here. If I can do this without screwing this up. So let me click on this. See, not all the controls are at my desk now. So
yeah, your aspect ratio is a little bit off too.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why. Well, I might be able to fix that. So I'll come back and I'll play with that.
That's fine.
Yeah, but if you look at some of these covers, it's just got, people have put some time into doing a little bit of art, and cover art, and it's definitely the things that a lot of podcasts do. And I don't know if it drives engagement or not, but obviously it helps. Some of these shows have 600,000-700,000 views, so it's some of that type of activity. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens here. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, the common thread in a lot of that YouTube art that I see is trying to visually communicate some level of emotion or shock or drama of some sort, which is always interesting. I mean, you look at some of the programs in there talking about what's happening in the markets or politics or whatever, and there's always like this shocked look on their face or something like that, or they have like a profile shot of a guest or something like that, or a topic or something like that that's creatively put into the artwork to create a little bit of an attraction, right? It's not unlike what you and I have talked about over the years around creating good podcast cover art, right?
Right.
It's got to be enticing. It's got to be something that's jumps out at you and makes you want to click the button. So, and that's kind of what's going on here. And I mean, to a lot of podcasters, this is what we're talking about here is nothing new. They've been thinking about this a lot. But I think if we maybe refocus a little bit more on YouTube and the podcasting space and video just in general, I think these concepts can be a little bit uniquely applied to the video side. And also, I'm going to be working on my background and my experience behind us too, just to amplify this. If I can sound buffer this room, maybe I can use my shotgun mic and get rid of this,
good luck with that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm
that's horrible.
It right now.
It's horrible.
No, I know. But
that's like horrible. Put your mic up in front of your face again.
No, I know. But the reason it's horrible is because it's so echoey in this office because I don't have it sound buffered yet.
Yeah.
So.
But so if I can, so what I've done now too is Rob gets to see what I see now or what you see. It used to be I sent him a single shot, so now I can send the straight YouTube stuff back. But some of the stuff is not available because for me to be able to click directly in front of me, and here's the reason, Rob, the bigger control surface cost about $6,000 more, has the rest of the buttons. So some of this extended stuff, I have to turn to the side and click with the mouse to get it up. But irregardless, I think that what we really want to do here is see what we can do to up the game just a little bit. And many of you are going to say, well, Todd, it doesn't matter for the majority of us because we're listening. But that's not really the goal here. The goal is to, if nothing else, try to see what we can do to prove whether or not this YouTube thing is real or not. Now, we have talked about putting this show on its own YouTube channel, but the challenge that I'm going to run into, at least for the very beginning, is that we've run this off my primary YouTube channel for years, and that's where the followers are at. And you have to have 1,000 followers to be able to live stream on YouTube. So potentially we will have to, if we do start another channel, we'll have to do
transition,
transition and spend some
Mhm.
time, and however long it takes to get 1,000 of you to follow or subscribe over there, and transition the show over there. But for now, at least for the foreseeable future, it'll be for those of you watching. Most of you don't, you just some of you come to the YouTube channel on Geek News and grab it, and other folks are just watching on Facebook. That's where the majority of folks usually are. So,
Mhm.
and Facebook is making it more difficult. We've got a group at Blueberry that seems like every time I try to start the stream over there, there's something has changed, and it's definitely easier to stream to a regular straight page than it is, or to your profile, than it is to stream to a group, because it make you go through a bunch of more hurdles, and it seems like their settings aren't sticking, and it always becomes a problem. But it is what it is, and we're going to try to do what we can do here.
Mhm.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating that James put up this link to the podcast index folks, and it listed 39,194 video podcasts that are in the podcast medium active today.
Are they active?
Well, it said in November of last year.
Oh.
So that was the number of video podcasts that were in the podcasting space back in November. But June of this year, this month, it looks like the number has grown by almost a quarter to over almost 51,000 video podcasts. And that's using an enclosure in an RSS feed. I guess it's using either a MOV file or an MP4 or a M4V file. So I would think the most common would be the MP4 file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it actually kind of surprises me that number's that big.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have thought there'd have been that many. So I was curious to figure out where they're coming from. That's where I'd like to see the breakdown.
Yeah, and are they active?
Right.
Or are they archive shows?
Or are they
right.
Are they MP4s that have been published purely with audio and not video? Because I've seen that happen too. Some people that are new to the space, they just export audio as an MP4,
right,
or M4V, and they don't know that they should be doing MP3. So,
right,
I've seen some of that as well.
Yeah, and then you combine that with what Spotify is doing with the supposedly video podcasts, where you upload directly to them. And that's not included in this number. And this is an area where we definitely see a kind of a split in the medium, right? But people are using that same term, video podcast, to describe episodes that are published to YouTube directly, episodes that are published directly to Spotify, and then ones that are put in an RSS feed. So they're kind of synonymous with, it's a video podcast, right? Is that accurate? Like you said, Todd, the audience doesn't care, right?
Right. So anyway, if you want to help us on this journey, and another thing too is, we have really never ever spent any time doing extensive. This show has limited show notes on each episode. We just, there's a paragraph. But to be successful on YouTube, you have to have a template. And so if anyone wants to help us create a template, I can probably hack it together in a couple of hours, something that can be used. But someone wants to help us with that we'd love to.
Yeah, I threw together one and
video template. I'm talking about a show note template.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the thumbnail that's used on.
Oh, okay.
On YouTube, but yeah, I mean, as far as a template for show notes, yeah.
Yeah. So, I was going to see if I found what you sent me. So, yeah, okay. So I see what you sent. This is good, and I think it's a start.
Right.
Yeah. But if you are, and let me show you what Rob put together here. Let me download this and then put it full screen so we can actually see it correctly. Let's see if I can do this. And I got to make sure. I think that's under preview. So let me do. See, this is the challenge here. We don't have a producer. We are the producer. And let me bring this other
As
one up.
with, most podcasters are their own producers, right?
Yeah. So this is what Rob came up with and this is what we'll put on Facebook afterwards, from today's show. So this is the type of thing we're looking for, is some sort of overlay that can be easily updated from episode to episode and then be able to be put on YouTube as part of our ongoing cover art. Because what I've been doing up to this point, Rob, is literally 5 minutes before the show, as I smile into the camera and do a screen cap, and I use that as our preview for the show, and then I don't go in later and update the video link. And I know many of you that are just straight audio podcasters. You're like, guys, we don't care. But I think it's good. If you guys understand this, we're really at this point trying to see what, and as much to Rob's initiative here, because I was quite fat, dumb, and happy just to continue as we were. So Rob's initiative to see if we could to up our game a little bit. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have a pattern of doing that, right? At different inflection points in the medium, we've adjusted a little bit. It's like when we changed our name and all that stuff.
So the question is, are we due for another name change?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything is on the table right now.
Yeah.
I think we built that name pretty significantly in the podcasting space. Changing it, I'm not sure it drives a lot of value. I think maybe updating the album art,
right,
with some color and some pizzazz might be good, but it's great the way it is. I mean, it communicates kind of what we do. It's got a microphone and screens and things like that. So
excuse me, if you have any ideas for new album art, we will pay for that. But if you have some ideas, let us know. And if you have someone that's like very, very brand brilliant, and if you're listening to the show and you think we need new album art, we will be willing to pay for. I think the thing something that we use on a regular basis, we're not afraid to contributing to for its creation. To be honest with you, so I don't want someone that is that works for a living in the creative space. It's to work for free.
Right.
But just to let you know, this is coming out of Todd and Rob's pockets. It's not coming out of Blueberry or Libsyn's pockets. So,
right.
Well, yesterday was a big day. They had the creator study.
Yeah. Yeah. It was terrific. It was definitely a change, seeing Tom Webster, doing something for Sounds Profitable versus primarily doing it for Edison, but Edison was there. So maybe it wasn't as different as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, because they used, my understanding is they used individuals from Edison's research, people that they talk to on a monthly or biweekly basis or something like that. They used that grouping to get this data. And I'm sure we'll have Tom on at some point potentially to talk about this in greater detail. And, of course, the folks that made this possible were Ad Results, PRX, Pod News, Simplecast, Market Ingenuity, Podbean, Spreaker, Red Circle, and Podcast Movement paid for this. So definitely want to thank them for their support of those folks in making this happen. But the sample size consisted of 617 weekly podcast listeners, 18 plus, who currently produce or have ever produced a podcast. The data was collected from quarter 2 2021 to quarter 1 2022. The data was collected over a longer time frame. Data is sampled from weekly podcast listeners and not less frequent or lapsed listeners, and should not be used for market sizing. So the first slide was the slide that just made me blew me away. And let's look at this first slide.
Mhm.
This is a slide that we've been talking about all day at Blueberry. This is the one that's burning up my internal Slack channels, because when I dropped this presentation into our team's team chat channel, we were all like, we're higher than that. Everyone. But here's the thing. We don't collect male female data on when someone signs up. We don't collect gender. We don't ask, are you non-binary? We don't ask if you're a woman, a male. All we really have to go off is show name in an assumption or by the name of the guest.
Right.
But with the U.S. population broken down in 4951, this survey found out that 69% of podcast creators are men, 29% women, 2% non-binary. And to me, this is the most shocking slide almost of this entire presentation, because I really thought we were farther along than this.
Well, there's no way, and maybe it was accounted for, but I think that there are many podcasts that are produced by men and women in combination. So I guess they're talking to individuals. So I guess they consider themselves to be podcast creators when they answered this question. So it's not basically just a formulation based on shows. It's a formulation based on individuals. So, I mean, in some ways I can see this being the case. I think women have come a long ways in this medium, because I would say probably 10, 15 years ago, it was probably like 98% male, right?
Yeah, 10 years,
Right.
10, 15 years ago. But
Right.
the way, the internal discussion we've had, and again, this is the first time this has ever been done on a big scale. We're pretty confident that we're running close to 50-50. As a matter of fact, we think women are leading, and women of color are leading, at least on our platform, are leading content creation. And again, that's only, and it's non-scientific. It's just us looking at number of support responses,
Right. I agree with
number of show names, that type of stuff, that kind of the internal polling. But it tells me we got a long way to go across the rest of the spectrum.
Right. To equal just the U.S. population.
Right.
Right. Now, granted, keep in mind too, it said that the sample here was who currently produce or have ever produced a podcast. I guess I don't know how that is applied to this.
I'm sure over time they're going to get that narrowed down a little bit, maybe over a shorter period too. They mentioned that in their comments.
Right. So you could have an accumulation of a lot of males.
Right. Yeah.
And I do think that women coming into the podcasting space has been a phenomenon that's mostly been happening probably over the last, 4 years, probably.
Well, at least 4 or 5
years.
How long's
Right.
podcast movement been going?
Since 2014, right?
So I would say over the last 8 years then.
Yeah. I mean, it's been building and growing. So, if this is what the ground truth is, then you're exactly right, Todd. We do have a lot of
we got a lot of
room
work to do.
Grow on this.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
So moving on here, the age thing is another thing that kind of set me back in my seat. And what it really tells me, if you look at this, and I'm just going to ignore the U.S. population. Those of you who are watching, you can download this from Sounds Profitable. You can go down and grab this yourself and look at the slides. But if you look at 18 to 24, 25%, 25 to 34, 33%, 35 to 44, 28%, 45 to 54, 24%, 12%, and age 55 plus 2%. Well, you and I are in that 55 plus group.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that 55 plus group, we were all 40 when podcasting started.
Right.
Matter of fact, I had just turned 40. And so I've aged into, over 18 years into this older group of creators. Now, what it tells me is two things. One, those that started podcasting in 2004, 2005 as 40-year-olds are definitely not podcasting anymore.
Right.
They're, they're gone.
Out of the medium. Right.
But the 45 to 54 age group, which would have caught those that would have been, 35 or so, or 30 at the time podcast. So, but this big, I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise of this age group of 25 to 34 being 33%, but I was pretty shocked on the 18 to 24 range being 25%. That kind of surprised me. It was that high.
Well, it's really over-indexing versus the U.S. population.
Yeah, because
I think it's that younger demographic that's way over-indexing.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. I mean,
and it's interesting because we've done our own internal study. We know the age of our content creators, and that 18 to 22 group is, we're lacking in that age group. 22 plus, we're doing okay, but 18 to 22, and also I just wonder, someday we're going to have to ask where these groups are by age group, where they're doing their shows.
Well, I think we know, Todd.
Yeah, I think we do.
I think Anchor and a lot of the newer platforms have been absorbing most of the younger podcasters for a few years now.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily surprised by this breakdown to some degree.
Yep. But there's a telltale thing later that makes me, we're going to get to it here in a minute, that makes me do a big and is another one that set me back in my seat. But let's move forward here.
Yep.
Let's talk about the breakdown of I guess the better word of it, the ethnic breakdown of podcast creators.
This is the one that really jumped out at me as being really significant. Yeah.
The thing that blew me away was the Hispanic Latino population at 24%.
Way over the indexing from the
way over
population.
So you've got those identify as Caucasian, 51, African American, 14%, Hispanic Latino, 24, Asian, 5, other or refuse, 6%. But this Hispanic Latino segment, that really blew me away, because if this is right, then 25% of the shows that are active today should be Spanish. Or maybe they're not producing in Spanish. Maybe they just, again, this is just,
they're not,
they're just,
of them are doing it. They're Spanish creators, but they may not be doing their podcast.
That's right. So it's just ethnic background. So the question really asked then, it should be asked, what we need to know is how many of those Hispanic Latinos are doing their shows in English and how many of them are doing it in Spanish. What's that breakup? Of that 24%, then where's the split? So that's something else I'd love to see in a future study.
Todd, what this also points out is that we do have quite a bit of ethnic diversity in the podcasting space.
Yeah,
right?
More than 50%.
Right.
49%, excuse me.
Right. I mean, it's so significant that it's pushed the white number back.
Yeah, awesome.
A lot.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
keep a percentage of the total pie.
And I keep saying that that we have really believe it or not, the only thing that surprised me about this slide was the Hispanic Latino percentage. The rest of it did not surprise me.
Right. Well, because it's pretty proportional to the U.S. population. That's the thing.
Right.
I mean, all the other groups here are all proportional, which
is
exactly what you would expect, right?
Yeah, 63 to 51 on Caucasian,
right?
13 to 14% on African American, 14% to 24% on Hispanic Latino, Asian 5 to 5, and other 5 to 6. So really, the group that is really outperforming is the Hispanic Latino community.
Right.
So
The rest of them are pretty consistent
pretty
with their
consistent, yeah.
population. Right.
So to me, this is a good news slide.
Yeah, this
This
is
is
a
a
win for the
really
industry.
this is big time win, yeah, win
And
win.
then you combine that with women, and you can see where we still have room to grow. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, I agree. Education, this one is a surpriser to me. So the U.S. population has 42% that have high school or less. Podcasting community only 12%. U.S. population 29%. Some college podcast creators 20, and this is where the big change happens. 4-year college degree 19 to 28, and then some graduate credits or advanced degree is 7% to 40%.
Yeah, this was shocking, I have to say.
Yeah,
Right.
I've looked at this a couple of times and get to thinking about it a little bit. But some of the follow-on slides back some of this data up, and but there is a difference here. Some graduate credits 7% on U.S. and advanced degree 40. So does that does that mean on the podcast creator side that those folks have master's degrees or PhDs, or do they have some? Because I have some master's degree credits, but I don't have a master's degree. So, so that's
and these charts are slightly different from each other too. I mean that some graduate credits is not in the podcast.
No, it's not.
So, right. So you kind of have to lump the advanced degrees with the some graduate credits into the advanced degrees.
But it's still
category,
still huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
It's a 30% difference, even combining those two together.
But you look at the U.S. population; they do have advanced degree as 3%, and it says 40%. So it's like holy crap,
right?
So that really big time surprise. Employment.
Well,
Oops, you want me back up?
Let's not move on from that so quick. But I'm just wondering what this means towards the industry. I mean, is this a sign of strength, or is it a sign of weakness in the industry? That's the question. Is it that we're leaning too heavy towards the extremely highly educated?
Well, I think
more than making this as a medium that's available to all.
I think that one of these unemployment slides is going to show you here, and if there's a couple of slides that back up that we are heavily the content creators in the podcast space, according to this study, are heavily educated.
Yeah, and costs isn't necessarily a huge impediment here. I mean, I think if you think about all the free hosting platforms and you think about the low cost of microphones that's out there today, I don't think that everybody has a cell phone now. So I just don't know that there's a huge obstacle from a financial perspective of getting into podcasting. I think it gets back to orientation towards being a content creator, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it worries me a little bit that the high school or less is only at 12%.
Right.
A couple of my kids fall into some college associate's degrees, not actually holding a 4-year degree. So my kids are creators too. So they fall into that 20% group. Mm-hmm. But it makes you go, and I think some of the other slides that we're going to show here reinforce that maybe we need to also be so I do not consider those that have high school only. They could have a trade. They could be carpenter, plumbers. They could be highly skilled workforce. It's not necessarily those that have high school diplomas are not they don't all have there's a huge segment of middle America here that is that work in trades, that work construction, that work and they make as much money.
Right.
Now there is a segment, don't we know understand that. There's a segment of folks that have high school diplomas that are working in service businesses, but again, I think there's a mix there, and there's a lot of people that are very successful that only have high school, but still, why, or were they less inclined to say in a survey, I've only got a high school diploma? Can they be influenced by being embarrassed to say, I only have a high school diploma?
Right.
Could that have driven this number? I'm just trying to think about someone calls me, and if let's say I have a bachelor's degree, but for many, many years I was working in the Navy with nothing but a high school diploma.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone had come to me and I had started some college, 2-3 courses, nothing big in the early days, so I could have said some college.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the some college number for the U.S. population, it's 29%. So there is some similarities here. So again, I'm not saying people are fudging on this.
It's possible.
Possible.
I think you're right, Todd. I think it is possible.
But how many people will fudge? Is it enough to fudge these numbers?
Well, it wasn't enough of people going from saying that they, if they were just high school graduates, to say they had some
Right.
college.
It's not a big jump.
You didn't really
Cross.
match.
No.
Right? So there's such a huge percentage.
But the advanced
degree
degree,
or less.
yeah, but the advanced degree is at 40%. That is like so far
I'm
out.
shocked on
That one's just blows me away.
Yeah.
Rob, do you have a master's degree?
No.
Yeah. See, I only have I have a bachelor's degree. So,
I never even considered getting a master's.
I had I had GI Bill I could have used when I get master's, and I decided I didn't need it. I'm using it for other things. Airplane lessons, airplane flight lessons, those kinds of things. But I'm later in life. I'm at the age now. If I was 30, I'd probably go back and get a master's degree, because in all honesty, a master's degree today is about the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. You almost have to have a master's degree now. So I don't know. It is a what does the audience think? That's
and I think more and more on the younger generation side, I thought that there was fewer people desiring to get higher education.
Well, and when we go into some future slides here, some of that data contradicts.
Well, yeah, because what do we keep hearing in colleges? It's mostly women these days. Right?
I don't know that data at all. I have no ground truth on any of that.
Yeah, I've heard that there's more women graduating from college now than there are men. So I don't know how that translates into these numbers.
I don't know either. So let's keep this in mind as we move into the next section and look at employment.
Right.
So, okay, so we see we've got 40, 28, so we got 68% with degrees, 20% with some college, so we're up to 88%. Well, if you look at the employment number, employed full-time in this chart is 73%.
Well, employed part-time is 7.
So that takes you to
80%. Right.
Yeah, and temporarily unemployed, that takes you to 87. So right there, you almost match some college. Those numbers line up just like slick. 73, 70, 87, 73, 80, 87.
Well, they're talking to the same people.
Same people.
Right.
So it makes sense. And you got homemaker, retired, student, other. So that, to me, that aligns with the last chart we just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So the country's pretty employed right now. Now, what I would love to see, Tom,
Well,
and
keep in mind when this study was done, it was done probably during the peak employment period too, right?
you have to go back and look at the dates. But here's one thing I'd like to see, Tom, on this next one is talk to us about how many of these people are salary and how many of these people are hourly. That will help us see, because it leads really into this next slide that talks about income. And when I saw this, I sat back in my chair and I was like, wow.
Well, if you think about the big chunk of master's graduates, right, that was in that other slide, you would expect to see the income.
And this is household
leaning pretty high.
Yeah, and this is household income. So this is combined income. If you're married or have a partner, they didn't ask your income. They said specifically this is household income numbers.
Right.
And
so you could have two income households.
Right. So we got 25,000 to 49,900 at 13%, under 25,000 at 12%. So that's 25%. Now let's think about that for a second. 25%. And let's go back up to the education slide. And we have high school and college, 32%. Some college and high school. So that kind of lines up. And what
just the 150 or more plus the 100 to 149 puts you at like 38%.
Well, if we look at, so if we just let's just be realistic. Let's say that you don't have a degree.
Right.
And you're not working trades, you probably are making 35 to 55. I don't know what I'm just assuming. Again, I'm just kind of guessing. Here in my community, the average income is $35,000. I live in rural America. So
I think it depends on where these people
live,
right?
Which
it isn't actually specified in here.
No. So, But if you break it down, under 25,000, 12%, 25 to 49,900, 13%, 50 to 74,900, 20%, 75,000 to 99,900, 17%, 100,000 to 149,000, 25%, 150K or more, 13%. So when you look at this income level, that to me, 38, 45% of you that are creating content out here. No wonder we're not hearing anybody complaining anymore about the cost of hosting, and this is why so many people are hiring producers, and because these folks have some serious disposable income
that got cut pretty dramatically over the last couple of months, though, with inflation.
Right. So, but still, even at 75K and above, is 17%. This slide. There's a lot of wowers in here. Let's just be frank.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about two people living in a household, $60,000, $70,000 incomes, you're up there at that 150 mark.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a couple, and they're both working, it's not a stretch to get to 150 plus. Very, very hard.
Right.
But I would expected that 100 to 149 number to be bigger than it is. The 150 plus
be two working households.
Two working households.
Right.
But I'm like, wow. Really, I'm like, wow.
Now, they didn't ask a demographic question of who's single and who's married or anything like that. I don't think I saw it.
There wasn't that.
All right.
So there isn't that breakdown.
Right.
But there's very rare that I talk to a content creator these days that doesn't have a partner. Talk to some single folks, but a lot of people have partners. So, but this income number is, to me, it's eye watering. It's amazing.
Well, I'm not necessarily tremendously surprised given the number
education
that we
level.
saw about the education level.
So it tracks.
Yeah.
With all these advanced degrees, master degree plus, with that huge number. So you would assume most folks that are working with a master's degree, again, here where I live, a master's degree is not going to make you $100,000. But if you're living in New York or California, you're going to be,
especially now.
yeah, you're going to be 100 plus easy in those big metropolitan areas.
Right.
So you have to be, or you can't live.
Yeah.
That's
unless you've owned your home in those areas for a long time, when
right.
prices were lower.
Right. But the age breakdown. Well, let's go in this next part. Talks about employment.
Right.
And this again follows along with people that have probably more opportunities to work from home. 46% mostly work from home. 37% mostly work outside the home. 17%.
That's a pretty high percentage. Of course, that was, I guess that was right during the middle of the pandemic. So,
but 37% that mostly works outside of the home.
Yeah, I thought this survey was done during the pandemic stuff when people weren't.
Well, we can go back.
Much.
We can go back to the beginning and look at that data, but so it does again. This big segment, 46% saying mostly work from home, and then those that work from home and outside home equally. Then you're up to 56, 63%, and that makes sense. 65% of the population today is mostly working from home, and the other 35% still has to go to the office, or they're a fireman or a nurse, or they have to. So it's. I guess I'm not surprised by this. But this one's a boom. Creators actively drive workplace purchases, 80%. Percent of participating in purchase decisions as part of their job, 80% yes, 20% no. And then the next one, does the financial responsibility for making workplace purchase decisions lie with you, 86%. So what are we saying here? I think what we're saying here is we have high-end, we have managers, we have business owners, we have C-suite folks. I mean, that's a big number. 86% of these people that respond to this makes the workplace purchase decision, and it lies with them. 86%. That is a effing incredible number.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure I know how that maps to being a podcaster, though. But
it shows, really, if you think about the level, because the level you're at in a business, because I make workplace purchase decisions,
right?
And I really only have one other team member that makes three. There's three of us that make workplace purchases. I have final authority, and I have two people. One that has almost equal authority, and a third that has some autonomy to order certain things. So if you think about 3 out of the 20 or so that are Blueberry, and then you look at this number, and 86% of the folks have purchase decision power, that lies with them. I think this is a remarkable number.
Yeah.
Maybe it shows that we've got a lot of business shows.
I just think it shows that we have a lot of highly educated professionals
that are creating content.
that are creating content and that also have financial responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the next slide.
Wow. This one doesn't surprise me. 57% Democrat, 17% Republican, 18% Independent, and 8% other. And I would imagine that about 18%, a huge percentage of those that were independent probably didn't want to say they were Republicans.
That's exactly what I was going to comment, is which side of the Democratic aisle do you think the independents lean towards? And my thought would be that they're probably leaning a little bit more to the Republican side, given what's happening in the world right now.
But it is curious that 57% self-identify as Democrats, and only 17% were willing to self-identify as Republicans.
Well, and keep in mind, when this survey was done, it was done from first quarter 2021 to first quarter 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in the heat, or in the middle of kind of the coming out of the pandemic and the crackdowns. Right.
So, but I'm not surprised based upon this one didn't. Actually, I thought it was going to lean more heavy Democrat. I thought the number would have been bigger.
Really?
Yeah, wow. I would have thought so. Be honest, be kind of frank with you, just based on the content I see.
Mm-hmm.
I would have not been surprised if this would have been 60-65% from a Democrat side.
So the 8% other is probably they didn't want to say.
Right.
Probably.
So, and I think in the times we live, I bet you. Now let's do the math here. 8 plus 18, that's 26. Oh, you got 26.
26, right.
And then plus 17, 36, 43, 43, 57. Let's just count all indies and others as Republicans. And so 43, let's take 10 points off and throw it on the Democrat side. So we'll say 67, 33 gets pretty close to kind of where I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I think that's fairly close. I don't know, what's the breakdown nationally between Democrats and
I think it's about 50-50. Well, Tom said it wasn't. Tom said it was those that identify currently as Republicans is probably a lot less. I
think it was in the 30%.
Yeah, 30% range. Yeah.
Right. And then the other part of that is the independent side, and
right.
then the rest of it's the Democrats.
Yeah. Right. So interesting from that standpoint. This one is not a surprise. Creators pass on their love of podcasts to their children. Yes, 66%. No, 30%. I have 5 children. 3 of them listen to podcasts. 2 of them don't. So it's about the split.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
At least in my family.
Yeah.
Does your daughter and son listen to podcasts?
I think my daughter does, but I'm not sure that my son does.
So probably 50-50 on your side.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
But this one should not come as any shock whatsoever. Creators, exceptional active users, social media, 94% YouTube, 88 Instagram, 88 Facebook, 78% Twitter, 72% TikTok, 70 Snapchat.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Podcast creators are heavy social media users
heavy.
For obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
They're promoting their shows.
Yeah, heavy.
Right.
So, not surprised there. Social media usage as compared to the U.S. population is, again, we're way ahead of that. Right. Right. Creators share and follow podcasts on social media. I'm not surprised about this one here. 84% shared a podcast, 86% followed a podcast host on social media, and 87% followed a podcast on social media. I do all of those things. So I'm in that category. So not surprised.
Yeah, who's not?
Right. Well, I think there's another slide here that I'm not surprised about either. Many creators own both iPhone and Android device. 71. I have both too. I have Android. This is owned
Well, it depends
both.
on what you. Okay, I think we have to parse this a little bit. Android and iPhone are two different things. Android is an operating system.
Right. But it's
iPhone is a device.
right.
It's not that it said iOS, because if it was iOS, that would probably be more equivalent here. Because it does say percent owning device.
Yeah, but they lump it into iPhone, so it should have been iOS and Android devices. That's
right.
But because you kind of lump Android into everything, so I'm sure
because Android makes tablets.
Right.
They make laptops. They make all sorts of stuff. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of like a mixing of two different things.
Yeah, but still pretty high number.
Yeah.
Podcast creators are very active users of smart audio. Weekly podcast listeners 36% and podcast creators 65%. I don't use smart speakers to listen to podcasts. I'm surprised at this number. It's that high. Because you're saying, hey A, hey G, you're this.
Do podcasters say yes here more than they do in reality because they want to think that they are, or they want to support it somehow, or they think it's a good future?
I don't want to speculate, but
I know.
I don't use a smart device to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I don't either.
I tell them a smart device to play jazz or rock and roll or
exactly, or play or give me an update on the weather
or what time is it? That's what I do when I get out of bed. What time is it?
Yeah, I think that's the majority, or the random kind of call out from the from the device, listening to the conversations in the room, trying to answer your comments, which is always a red flag to me. It's like, I didn't say your name. Why are you talking to me right now?
This one blew me away. This one, I couldn't believe it. I'm just shocked at this slide. Spotify is a service most often used by creators to listen to podcasts. Really? Really?
Well, think about the age demographics that were shown in the above slides, Todd.
We haven't got to that yet.
No, it was up in the
yeah. But
in the earlier slide about the age breakdown.
I'm like, really?
Well, YouTube and Spotify, as you know, Todd, when Spotify first launched, it was all these young creators wanting in that platform. Like they didn't care about anything else.
They didn't care about anything else.
They just wanted to be in Spotify.
So I'm showing my age here. I don't even use Spotify anymore. Don't even use it.
Yeah, and that's why we've seen the newer hosting platforms index higher towards consumption on Spotify than Apple. Like an older, longer running, hosting platform typically has indexes much higher on iOS.
This just shocks me.
Yeah, because the shows have been around longer, and the new shows, everybody wants their primary focus. And this is where I think Spotify took this research and ran with it to say, well, if everybody just wants to be on Spotify, then let's embrace that.
Right. 30%, 21%, and only 11% listen on iOS. So this is 51. So we're missing here 30, 51, 63. I'd love to know what the rest of it is.
Yeah, and I could say the same thing about YouTube. I think everybody wants to be on YouTube too, right? So, and coincidentally, that's why we see those two platforms starting to take the strategies that they're taking in the market.
But I went and searched pretty heavily over the past week on YouTube, and I could only find at best, maybe 50 to 60 podcasts that were doing well on YouTube. Now, they were doing really well, but I could not find most podcasts that I found on YouTube were doing 10, 15, 20, 30.
I think you're looking at this through a podcaster lens. a more traditional
But
podcast.
I was
I'm not sure that's what's going on.
but
here.
I was
What's going on
looking.
here
I
is
was looking.
People are looking at content on YouTube
I
as podcasts.
but I was making sure that those shows had actual podcasts. They weren't just YouTube shows.
Well,
and I found very few that were super successful.
it gets back to the bigger picture, right? What's the definition of a podcast now?
I know.
Yeah.
But
right.
yeah, it's weird.
I mean, I think that's what we're seeing happen here is the expansion of what the listener perceives as what a podcast is.
Right. But if they have podcast in their title, I'm going to assume on YouTube that they have a podcast on Apple Podcasts.
RSS feed. Right.
Right. Going to assume.
I don't think that there's that many of them that have an RSS feed that are considered podcasts on YouTube. I mean, based on what you just told me, that kind of confirms that.
But then again, I don't have, there's how many bajillions of, I only did searching. I did some of the category searches, tech podcasts, business podcasts. I'm looking for, and I encourage those of you that are out there, go look at shows that you listen to and see if they have a YouTube presence and how they're doing.
Well, I mean, Todd, it's this little piece of data is a little bit behind what I was trying to do with this show. I was trying to say, well, how can we become a little bit more like the shows that are considered podcasts on YouTube, right? That are getting, tens and 20s and 30,000 and 50,000 views, right?
Yeah. Well,
not all of them are podcasting. What they're doing is they're creating segmented content.
Yeah.
Right. That is being considered in the same light as a podcast because it's being produced in a similar way. So people are just assuming that it's a podcast. So when they get asked this question, they answer, well, yeah, I listen to podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are podcast creators. This is questions being asked to podcast creators.
I guess it depends on what they.
This isn't This isn't a listener. This is a creator.
Creator, right?
So this is where that's where my confusion was in. I'm like, I listened to podcasts on like 3 different podcasting apps.
Right. It'd be nice to parse this one down a little bit more.
Really, I'm just like, I don't know how deep you can go down the rabbit hole. That's the problem.
And does Tom have an interest in parsing this out too? I mean, I think it depends. He's been this proponent of listeners. Of course, we're not talking about listeners here, but podcast creators, do they really care what the distinction of podcasting is anymore? Or are they just looking for audience?
Well, the majority of them are still on Apple Podcasts, maybe.
Yeah.
Or, available as podcast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. So.
Well, I do feel a tug of war pulling us back to video again. And I'm kind of embracing it. I mean, I was a big fan of the early days of this medium being so heavily video focused, which it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked on the Zune portable media player, and that had a bigger screen than the iPod had.
Right.
So I was positioning that platform when I was working on the Zune podcast area to be a device that was leading the charge when it comes to consuming video podcasts.
But this show, let's be frank, we do it 90 minutes. So are people going to watch us for 90 minutes?
I mean, Todd, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, YouTube creators that are doing primarily just video, but they'll go easily 30, 40 minutes.
Now, I'll watch 30 minutes. It goes much beyond that. I'm ready for something new. It takes a lot. When I see a YouTube video that's an hour, I go, ugh.
Well, and Todd, we put this question out to the audience too. How long should this show be?
Right.
And I think of the people that responded to us, most of them wanted us to keep it the same.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Comedy. Creators over-index for interest in tech, science fiction, and drama, which I find surprising as well. Comedy, music, tech, entertainment, sports, 46 to 35%. And then below that is news, history, politics, true crime, science, food, drama. That goes down to 28. There's 2 pages of this. Travel, mystery. Go ahead.
Yeah, so keep in mind that this list is what the creators
Are listening to.
Podcasters, what their interests are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not your everyday listener out there, but these are podcast creators' topic interests.
So this show could be considered an entertainment/tech. So I don't know quite where it falls.
I don't know where the entertainment comes in, but I think we would like to think that we can be more of that. But and where's the music, right?
Right.
So
and a matter of fact, someone interviewed me the other day. They have some sort of deal with iHeart, and they played in my intro to my interview about 25 seconds of Thunderstruck from AC/DC, and I'm just like, okay, you have a license with iHeart, but I'm listening to you on Apple Podcast. Let's not cover you. So it was kind of curious. So,
well, this is also a little bit of glimpse into the psyche of podcasters, right? Around where their interests lie, which could be used as a kind of a marketing positioning for reaching podcasters, right?
Right.
New creators, new podcasts, because these are the genres that they follow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a podcast hosting platform, you might want to advertise in comedy podcasts or music podcasts or technology podcasts like the New Media Show.
Right. Hey, there you go. All right, let's go ahead and keep this ball rolling here. We're taking longer than Tom did.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So if this is compared to the U.S. population, number 1 is comedy for U.S. population. Number 1 for podcasters, comedy. News is number 2. Music is number 2. Society and culture is number 3. Tech is number 3. So it's really, there's not a lot of comparisons here. Only comedy seems to be leading the pack.
Yeah.
Now, this I absolutely believe. Creators are not significantly more active listeners than weekly podcast consumers. Creators are listening 8 hours and 18 minutes. Weekly listeners are 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And I think the majority of podcasters actually probably listen to less.
I would think so.
Because we're creating content.
I'm surprised by this.
They're creating content.
Right. And they're probably working full-time jobs.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure unless they're, where they're fitting 8 hours.
This is my job, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, but usually they're the ones I want to listen to, besides ones I'm sampling. So,
yeah.
All right, let's move on next. Okay, so this was a slide that still has my head scratching. So let's think about the data we've said here so far. Highly educated. Making lots of money.
Yep.
Making lots of money. Let's just be frank. 100,000 plus, that number's huge. 75,000 plus, huge. And maybe some people don't consider 75,000 a lot of money, but a lot of people in this country would consider $75,000 a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Plus a year. So more than 4 in 10 creators, listen, this is insane. More than 4 in 10 creators have been listening to podcasts for under a year. So that means they've been a creator under a year from this sample. 4 in 10.
Why do you think we have so many millions of podcasts that don't have very many episodes in them, right?
Yep. So now let's look at this. 28% of the people that responded to this survey have been listening to podcasts from 6 months to 1 year. 28%. 14% less than 6 months. 42% of the people that they surveyed in this have been listening to podcasts less than 1 year. Now,
Right.
I'm going to go back and give a statistic here in a little bit. So if you think about the number of podcasters that fail, which
Right.
generally is 3 in 10 will make it. 7 will fail. 2.5 to 3 will make it to 20 episodes. So if we're thinking 3, so this kind of falls in line with the pod fading piece. Because
I'd also like to know, in addition to this,
age.
how long have they been podcasting, not just listening to podcasts?
Well, you are not creating unless you're listening.
Yeah, but what came first? Being a listener or being a creator?
I think for a lot of people, they were listening first before they became a creator, because even on my show, I have spawned hundreds of new podcasts that are no longer in existence from people thinking they could do it better.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just curious what that distribution is, because I do think that there are people that have tried to start podcasting that maybe weren't really avid listeners.
But if we look at the 1 to 3 year mark, 29%, well, guess what that falls into? That falls into my 30% window that make it. More than 20 episodes are usually a year or two. 3 to 5 years, 15%. 5 years, 14%. So if we look at this number, 29, it's 58% of this group is 1 to 5 years that were sampled in this survey. But this is an amazing, this to me is like, Houston, we have a problem.
Do we really?
We do.
I think this is indicative of a medium that is growing too, growing fast. Right. It's also a sign of there is a flow of new life coming into the medium. It's not full of people that have been podcasting for 5 years.
It's true. But at the same time,
this screams to me that there's an education need out there.
So
right?
We have this highly educated, making a lot of money podcasters.
Right, but knowing how to podcast.
40% of them. I'm trying to read into this. Maybe I shouldn't too much here. But what really screams to me is that this number should be much higher in the 1+ year category. This screams to me of two things. Yes, a lot of podcasters, but a lot of failures.
Well, it's, what is it, 54%? Was it? No, is it 29, 30?
42% are under a year.
Okay, so let's say 30, 40, yeah, 40, was it 44% have been listening for up to 5 years. Right?
Yeah. That's in, but then again, the question that they ask is, have you ever created or are you creating?
Mm-hmm.
So remember, this could have already included people that pod faded. But being that 42% of these people have listened less than a year.
Right.
That ties together to some parallels that is worth probably its own whole doggone study. You spend a lot of time right in these two things.
Yeah, but this is also a sign of growth too, I think. This is a growth in listeners. Right.
When we have year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data on this,
mm-hmm.
and if these numbers don't roll up,
that's why it's going to be important to know what the distribution of is people that are actually podcasting.
Right. And
given these numbers,
yeah, and how many have already pod faded or quit or
right.
So,
yeah.
We might be a very educated very deep in the pocket group of people, but it's amazing to me that 42% have been listening under a year. That just, I saw this and I was like, my head actually, I'm like, I did one of these. I'm like, what?
What does this mean?
What?
Right.
And I'm reading way too much into it, but I was like, So, yeah. And not surprisingly, creators are extremely receptive to advertising in podcast. 7% dislike. 10% generally dislike. So 17% say yuck. 83% are okay. So I guess that's is good. I guess we're going to find some more stuff out at Podcast Movement when they talk about ad loads, and that's the next one. It's going to be a lot of advertising stuff in the next one. So,
okay, these are creators and their feelings about
advertising
sponsorship messages in podcasts that they are listening to.
Right.
I think it's easy to confuse this with, I guess this would map to what they would do with their own podcast, maybe?
If 83% of podcasters want advertising, I would eat my hat.
But that would be inconsistent, right? If a creator is extremely receptive to advertising and podcasting when they listen, you could conjecture that would be fairly similar to their openness to having advertising
where
in their podcast.
Yeah, 52% are interested and often find useful. So that fits more into the category of, yep, I would have advertising in my podcast, where 31% was don't mind them and occasionally find them useful. So anything, right. So, maybe our data trends here, but the next question that they should ask is, do you want advertising in your podcast? Yes or no. What is that number? All right, let's keep going here. Compared to hearing advertisement in other places, when you hear ads on podcasts, how likely are you to consider the brand advertised? 44% said much more likely. I'm in that category. 32% somewhat more likely. 19% neither likely nor unlikely. 3% someone less likely, and 2% much less likely. That's, to me, is kind of shocking, but.
Well, I think we've always known that the receptivity of listeners to podcast ads does skew pretty heavily on the favoritism side.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the ad, though, too, right?
All right. Creators support each other. In the past 12 months, have you given money to support podcasters? Yes, 68%. No, 32%. And I would put myself in the yes category on that.
Now, this is paying for a subscription?
Yeah, have you supported someone else? Yeah.
Right.
So 68 yes, 32% no. And you 32%, get out there and support the shows you're listening to. Creators support each other. Percentage of podcast creators are currently engaged in listed behavior. Pay for a podcast subscription on Apple Podcasts, 60%. That, and this number, pay for Spotify Premium, 75%. They don't say pay for Spotify Premium Podcast. They're saying pay for Spotify Premium. In other words, paying for the subscription on Spotify. Pay for a podcast subscription on Patreon, 48. This blows me away, this number here. I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah, but isn't Spotify Premium mostly music related?
I think if you get a premium podcast on Spotify, you have to pay more. You don't, just because you pay for Spotify. If you subscribe to Spotify, I think that's Spotify Premium.
Right, and that's an ad-free offering, which I know is huge.
Right, but they don't
Spotify,
get.
It's much larger than the paid side,
but
the non-paid.
Yeah,
side.
but they don't get premium podcasts for that payment. They have to pay more to the premium podcast, and it says pay for a podcast subscription on Apple Podcasts. That distinctly says 60% had paid for a premium episode on Apple Podcasts. 75%. This says pay for Spotify Premium. That means paid for Spotify, not paid for a podcast subscription on Spotify.
Right. I think
unless there's a typo here.
Yeah, and that 60% is, I think that's the number that's more shocking to me. Is that 60% of podcast creators have paid for a premium subscription podcast?
That blows me away. I haven't.
Right. That's a big
number.
That's a big win for Apple.
That's a big win for Apple. Right. Pay for a podcast subscription on Patreon. I do this.
I believe that. I believe that.
So.
But I think the Spotify number is a little bit of a confusing bag.
It is. If it would have said pay for a premium podcast on Spotify,
then it would be consistent with the rest.
Right. And maybe there's a typo here. But you don't get premium podcasts without paying extra on Spotify.
Right.
So.
Well, and I thought that on Spotify Premium was an ad-free version of
Spotify. It is.
Right.
Yeah, that's my understanding. But it doesn't mean you're getting ad-free podcast on Spotify. Maybe you're getting Joe Rogan ad-free, but you're not getting premium podcast.
Well, the only way they can probably do ad-free is if it's not dynamically inserted. So, right?
Well, people have premium subscriptions to. It's just like Apple. Right. You can buy premium on. Okay.
Right, and it doesn't have any advertising. It doesn't have host reads. It doesn't have anything in it. I just don't know that Spotify has that filter to filter out host reads.
Yeah. So we already know that we need more ladies. We know that. Yep. We need creators over 45. The huge opportunity to reach that market.
Mm-hmm.
There's element economic and academic privilege to the creation of podcasts. Boy, oh boy. So cancel culture going to come after us because we're academically and economically privileged. That's kind of scary.
Creators age 45 plus are underrepresented.
Yeah. We know that.
They're dying off, huh?
Some of the economic and ideological biases of creators show up in the difference between what genres of podcasts are popular, true crime, society, and culture, and what creators are more prone to consume tech, history, and science.
Right.
Yeah. These are sounds profitable as observations. For some, creating a podcast has potential introduction being a regular podcast listener, period. If ever every new podcaster only brings what it is a literal handful of new listeners, the space is enriched. Well, that's true because we're also bringing a lot of new creators as well. Yeah, we can. This is where they say we can never forget that every new creator is a listener, and these listeners are extremely receptive to podcast advertising. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know the distribution of how people enter becoming a podcaster. Is it coming from being a listener, or is it not? Is it just coming from it being an opportunity, and they may or may not be listening to podcasts themselves?
Yeah. Right. Well, they did a good job on this, and it's a first ever. So there was some eye openers in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they could have heard my explanation, because I had a couple of expletives during the presentation, I was like, wow.
Knock my head off.
Wow.
Yeah.
But now that we've had a taste, we're going to want more.
That's right. Tom, you've got your work cut out for you.
He's going to say, write the check.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, we went and looked and asked for the sponsorship package. It's not cheap to support that package. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I did see that at Podcast Movement, it's already in the schedule for the Dallas event that there's going to be a separate Edison research presentation that are going to be being done down there too. Yeah. So I guess what we're getting is kind of doubling up on this stuff. So we may be getting more research than we had prior, just with Tom working at Edison. Between Sounds Profitable with Edison and Edison themselves, we may be getting double the data.
Right. So that was quite the run here on that data. And of course, the Infinite Dial Australia was also released.
Yeah.
So that's out there.
Any big things out of that?
Basically that listening hit 40% of Australians 18 plus up, 37% in 2021. The U.S. equivalent for 12 plus is 38%, down from 41. Of course, we had some pandemic contraction. One thing, as a reminder, Podcast Awards nominations open on Friday. So if you're not already registered over at podcastawards.com, make sure that you get over there and get registered.
Mm-hmm.
We've had obviously, just like we always do, we've had a rush here in the last week or so of people registering. Let's see if I can push the right button here. There we go. So definitely go over there and get registered. And registration remains open through the nomination period. So if you get the word late, don't worry. You can still participate. Voting goes on the entire month of July. So we encourage you to go over there and participate. Yep. So, Rob, what do you think of our new screen makeup? Did we do better here?
I think so. I think it was better. I think we created a more immersive experience, Todd.
Well, good. And you're not in the South 40 like I normally have you. You know, this, and you can't even see yourself because I've moved the camera a little bit. So the original view, you're kind of chopped.
Yes. I can move though.
Oh, that's true. Well, when it's this view, I have to move the camera because, well, yeah, you can move and wave.
Right.
Hey, our listener survey is still going on. And matter of fact, Rob, you got a preview of our media kit. What did you think?
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, so we're not ready to show it off yet because it hasn't been officially released. I actually let Rob see the beta version. It's still being beta tested.
It was top secret too.
Yeah, you can share it with the Libsyn team. Say, holy shit, look what Blueberry's bringing to market. Let's see if I can find it. Where did I send it? Oh, I sent it to you in text.
So it does show that we published 799 episodes. Though.
Yeah, remember that's audio and video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it's all in this. It's basically what I picked up. So right now we're running 83% men, 16.6% women. Our age breakdown, biggest number of listeners of this show is 56 to 65 at 36%. 36 to 45, 24%. 18 to 25, 4%. 24%, 46 to 55. Under 18, 0. Over 65, 12, and 26 to 35 so far, 0, because we've had no responses on those levels. 76% of you have a bachelor's degree, 9.5% of you have a high school diploma, 4.76% of you have an associate's degree, 62% of you are employed, 12% are retired, 12% other. Students make up 8.33%, 4.16% part-time. 13.3% of you still have kids at home, but most of you, 86.6%, have no kids. Let's see here. I need to pull this up a little higher. 73.6% of you own a home, and 15.7% rent, and 10% neither. Where's neither? You don't rent or own. You just live with mom and dad. So maybe that aligns with the student number. So anyway, our survey. Let's help build the survey information, but this show right now has an 84% impact play. What does that mean? That means that 75% of you listen at least, 84% of you listen to at least the 75% mark.
Oh, is that what that means? Okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's
83% men.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not surprised about that necessarily.
And 16% women.
But again, the survey data is still a little thin. We need more of you to participate. And I got to pull some stats data for Rob so that he can do some research to see how we're doing.
Well, we're not mapping to the highest growth category in age, are we?
No. Or again, the survey data is still limited. We haven't had that many people respond.
Yeah, it's not probably statistically significant.
It's not yet. No, not statistically significant. So if you haven't took our survey, we want you to, so we can have a statistically significant percentage, and that link to that survey is in the show notes at newmediashow.com. We want you to follow or subscribe when you're on the website. That's the main thing. Get over there and follow or subscribe to the show. And of course, if you have comments on today's podcast, you can send them to either Rob or I. I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter.
I can be found on Twitter as well, at Rob Greenlee. And you can send me an email as you want to robg@libsyn.com. Happy to hear from you. So send us your ideas and your comments, and we'd love to talk about it on the show here. And like Todd was mentioning earlier, any kind of thoughts on the graphics presentation that we have for this show, we'd love your ideas. And I know we've gotten audio from listeners in the past, and tell your friends about the show.
Absolutely.
We just want to be a resource to everyone, because it sounds like we have a lot of new creators out there that need to have a little backstory on the industry, and that's what we try and do.
Podvader says the youngsters don't want their doctorate in podcasting yet. Well, you might be right there, Podvader. And we did have some comments come in. We're so absorbed. Davey, thank you for your comments. He says it could be the huge number of sample are doing podcasts as a business. He also says, wonder which age group has the most pod fade. Eileen says, Todd, are you seeing the comments on YouTube? Oh, well, she was commenting on YouTube, and I don't have a split screen for YouTube, so I apologize, Eileen. She said, I think this slide is pretty accurate. I'm in the 29% women or less. I'm in the 55% group. I don't think it's embarrassing to say you did not go to college. Employed has to include business owners. So I agree with you.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's going to bring us to the end of the show. And I'm going to end things a little bit different today, putting our graphic up. I'm going to leave our website up. So the goal here is for you to remember to go over to New Media Show. Don't forget, our guest last week was Alvin Brooke from Hootsuite. If you haven't listened to that episode.
From Buzzsprout.
Oh, Buzzsprout. Excuse me. He's going to I don't work for Hootsuite. And I did not get the 503 show out. This is 503. So 504 will be the Podfest presentation. So everyone, thanks. Thanks for being here.
Just audio only on that.
Yeah,
right?
Audio only. And I'll put it in the video feed as well. So those of you that subscribe to the video will have just audio for Podfest. All right, everyone. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.